celebration for Mr. Perry. You're getting the benefit out of this by being here. All of the efforts that's put forward is a celebration for Mr. Perry for what he has done for us. He's worked awfully hard. Spends many hours on these presentations, and he's not getting anything out of this otherwise the fact of us being here. I don't ever know how to introduce you otherwise the fact that Mr. E.L. Buck Perry. Appreciate you very much, sir.
Thank you. First, I want to say I want to welcome again and welcome all you fellows, and I really appreciate you coming. I hope that you had a good time. For the last couple of years, or last 3 years, I have been talking about what makes a lake tick. Something that and also so that you do not get lost on a lake. You have to keep your eyeballs open to what you can see. You got to be able to look at the terrain and look at the other things and try to recognize structure. A lot of people have problems. Some people have presentation of lures that give them a little problem. Control of depth and speed. But actually, you can become the best troller, the best caster in the world. But if you can't recognize productive structure, you could fish forever and not catch a fish. It'd be a pure accident, because a lure out of position won't catch a fish. And for spoon plugging teaches anything, it's to see that you and your job is the mapping and interpretation of what's out there. A lot of people, if you read the handout that I gave you, a lot of people have problems. Not just a few, but a lot of people. And you'll be amazed at the people who say, I don't think I can do it. It's too much involved. It really isn't. And so the first part of my talk, I'm going to talk about the structure situations that exist in your water, in my water, in somebody else's water, the water in California, the water in Michigan, the water in Florida. I want to show you that. I'll tell you, we got to know what the structure situations are. I was going west, and after I crossed the Mississippi River, I was going still farther west, and I saw off in the distance this lake. It was rather a flatland area, and I saw this lake in the distance. And when I got up there, I saw that it was going to be full of trees. And when I got up to cross the dam, this is just about the scene that I saw. I went across the dam and I looked at this thing, and I went on across the dam and went there, and when I went over about a half a mile, I said, I better go back and look at that thing again. And I saw that little road right there. So I turned around over here and came back and went down in there. And what I saw was this. There was a boat dock down here. And it was fairly late in the afternoon, so I just decided I'd never fished this lake before, so I thought I'd just wait overnight and fish a little while the next morning before I took off on west. And the next morning, I had to park my car somewhere right in this area, and the next morning, about daylight, I heard all these automobiles coming in. And I said, didn't take much of imagination to say that, well, it looks like they're going to have a tournament on this lake today. And so it looked like that when they took off, it sounded like a bomber taking off, it looked like that there was about 20 or 25 boats. And they all took off, and all of them disappeared into the timber. That was a big lake. I could hardly see the end up here. I couldn't see it all the way, but generally I could see some of those openings, and later on as I looked at the lake a little bit better, that was the shape of it. So after these people had gone, I launched my boat and started out. I started trolling the shallows here, and I came around here, and the reason I didn't go over to the dam and troll the dam with the small lures was because there was a very little riprap. In fact, it was very small. This was a very broad area right here, and even some dirt was shining in certain spots along there. So apparently they didn't lower this lake very much, and apparently they hadn't got too much wind through there. But anyway, I started out right around this corner. As I went around this corner, I saw this little drainage that showed that there was a channel going up through there, because I could see up through there. So there was a channel coming down through there. So I made a few trolling passes with small lures, and then I got a little bit deeper, and what I found was that there was a hump right here. I kind of expected a hump. Now, why did I expect the hump? You notice that there's no trees here. This dam was quite long, and that's the clean area where I can tell you right now, stay the hell out of the trees, because your presentation lure is not going to get you in trouble. They had to take the dirt from this spot, and lots of times when they remove this dirt, it looks kind of like a pit, and there'll be humps and things around in this particular pit, so to speak. But this is a clear area. So this hump, I come around with about a 200 lure on the outside of that little break line, that little channel. And just as I got to the base of that hump, it was somewhere around 8 or 9 feet. I got a fish. It was one of those tournament-sized fish, about 12, 14 inches. Well, I made another pass with the same lure, and I hit another fish. So I went to the cast, and I don't know how many fish I caught, but it's quite a few, and they all ran about 13, 14 inches. But before I left there, I always carry a little cork. Now, I didn't say a bobber, I said a cork. And I had a little long line on it, and I had a weight on it. So I just threw this little cork overboard, because I said, well, the small fish are here. I better come back later, because that would be a bigger fish school move in. But it did give me this indication. It told me this: these fish are on the move. Here was a school of small fish up around 8 feet. So I went to work. It should be that this channel was what led these fish up to the base of that hump. So I took that, and at that point, and went down and found out where it entered this channel coming down through here. I worked that all the way down to that intersection between those two. There was no more fish. So it was very obvious that these fish were deeper. So I came right around and went deeper along that break line, that channel. And this is what I found. This is the pictures I remember this looked just like the situation that I hit. It wasn't more than 10 years ago, so I can remember at least I struck the situation 10 years. Anyway, I made some trolling passes here, and I found out that thing was breaking about the long line 100. I found it was breaking somewhere at the top of it about 14 feet. Then as it entered the other channel, it was down just beyond 20 feet. It looked like that when the dredging took, but they removed the little dirt, so that thing dropped off pretty fast right here, and at this point. So I made some passes there with a lure, and I swung around and made a pass like this, and I came down and walking down this thing, and just as it walked in this area, this is a very narrow area right here, just as it ran off, just as it started bumping and started coming off, I got a fish. This fish was about 3 to 3.5 pounds. Nice fish. So I swung around and made a pass out through here, and I came up through here, here, and I swung right this way and came right across through here. And just about the time I thought my lure was going to bump, a fish took it while it was swimming free. Now that told me from that little school up there that there was a school of active fish right here. Because on the first, so I went to the cast. The first cast I made to sink into this area where this came together, a fish took it before it hit the bottom. That doesn't happen very much, but this is a real story to me. These fish need to be caught. They are really active. There's a big school of them in there. So I went on the cast, and I'll tell you, I caught quite a few. And after my limit, I just started throwing them back over my head so it wouldn't scatter them. And after, I don't know how long there, but by this time when I catch one, I just let out a rebel yell, you know, I didn't know anybody was around, and I'd throw him back over behind my back into the lake. And I looked up, and there was a bass boat with two guys in it coming down toward me, and they got right in here. And that's about when I first saw them. And when so they were watching me, and so I hollered at them. I said, come on over, come over. I said, the fish are right here. Well, they was a little reluctant to come because they were bass pros. They never ran into a rat like me before. So I said, come on over. They're right here. So I finally got them over to about in here, and I was anchored right in here somewhere. And so they came over, and I said, the fish are right out there, and it's somewhere around 20 feet, where you got to make your cast, and then, because it's just the break line into the channel from this side feeder stream cut, very narrow. In fact, the fish were on both sides of that where they came together. One of them had a plastic worm, one of them had a spinnerbait. And so they made some casts, and I said, well, you got to throw it a little bit farther out there. And so they made a few casts out there, I don't know how many, and I said, yeah, just retrieve. So they'd make the cast out there, and I hope you can see that. They held the rod tip high, and they said, pip, pip, pip. Now, how I was catching them, let me tell you, I told those guys the same thing. I said, now watch me, fellas. The fish were there, I'm sure they were still there. I said, make the cast, sink it, watch how I do it, and then sink my line, and then I start winding just about as fast as I can wind, because these fish are active and they're moving. And I said, let me see if they're still there. So I made a cast. Yeah, they're still there. And I landed this fish, about 3 pounds, 3.5 pounds, and I threw him over 8. So they made a few more casts. And I said, now, move the lure fast. These fish are not sick. That's what I told them. I said, they're not sick, they're active. They're all balled up there and they're fighting for something between each other. They're in a frenzy, so to speak. So they threw the lure back there. And they come there doing this. I said, speed it up, speed it up. Of course, when they speeded it up, they left it. They left where the fish were, with the type of lure that we're using, the jump lure. So I said, let me see now, fellas. I'm sure they might still be there. And so I made a cast, sunk my lure down, dropped my rod tip, sunk my line, and started cranking real fast. And just as she come bouncing through that break line and up there, a fish had it. And I said, yeah, they're still there. Now, you won't believe this. I did that 5 times. Now, the last time that I did, the 5th time, was the 41st consecutive cast with a fish. Now, they saw me throw them away. They heard me yelling and everything. I never did tell them this. But finally, I said, take this lure. So I cast it across the boat. They took off the spoon plug. And I said, put it on the line. Now, let's see you make the cast like I did. And so a spoon plug, if you don't know how to cast it with an easy throw, You snap cast, it just spins and doesn't go very far. But if you make a smooth cast, it'll just keep sailing, just keep going on out. Well, about the third time, he got it out there. And I said, now let it sink to the bottom. You saw how I did it. Okay, you saw it hit the bottom. Now sink your line so that you can get so you don't lift the lure off the bottom. So he did. He sunk the line. He raised his rod tip up in the air and says, oop, oop, oop. And I said, man, didn't you see what I did? And I said, I'm not going to demonstrate that again. I'm going to make you do this thing right. So he made the cast again, and about the third or fourth cast, I said, get that rod tip down, get that, and he started. I said, now wind her up. So he, I said, wind her up. And so they started laughing, this guy. I said, wind her up. So he wound it up, big old, he had a fish. He caught, after all, he did catch 5 fish. Then his partner wanted to take it away from him. He said, let me have that lure. I said, boys, I got to go. Throw me my lure. So they threw me the lure, took it off, and I took off. Now, later on, I was messing around. I want to see how the bass do, and they're sitting in the, so I was in my camper. They didn't know me. I was out and hearing all these bass boats started coming in a little later, and I heard these guys talking. The only thing I really heard was this one guy says, it was the damnedest thing I ever saw. And you know, they never knew who it was or what it was, or they didn't know anything about it. And on top of that, I wasn't about to tell them. But I could talk that's a fish story, but I'm going to move on with this here story. Now let's see what the situations really are. Some of you know this. You say this is old stuff, but when we get into this area, we got to be sure that we know what it is. A structure fishing is this. Structure, breaks, break lines, and deep water. Structure is a feature on the bottom different from surrounding area. Breaks are things on this structure, such as stumps, rocks, and so on. As fish move, they'll pause and stop at breaks on the structure. Break lines is more rapid increase or decrease in depth somewhere on that structure. And of course, the end of and goes all the way to the deep water. That is what a structure situation is. Now, there's a lot of structures, I'll say later, in a lake or any water. But they're not all structure situations. This gave me a little trouble on my nomenclature back there. But this is the easiest way I knew how to do this thing. There's a lot of breaks, but it doesn't necessarily say that it's going to be a structure situation. There's a lot of break lines, but it doesn't say it's going to be a structure situation. Now, we have a guideline for what a structure situation is. It's the path, features the fish use must go all the way from the deep water, sanctuary depths, to the shallows and vice versa. That's all it is to it. So if you see a bar, if you see an area that you're fishing, a hump or a gully or anything, and it doesn't extend all the way, forget it. Let's take a bar. I'm going to talk about a bar in just a minute. If it doesn't go all the way, you're wasting your time. Whether it's downstairs or upstairs, it makes no difference. So most of the water in a lake contains no fish. There's some lakes, and natural lakes, I've only found one structure situation. But in certain reservoirs and things, you may find all of them. Now you say, what are all of them? There's 17 of them. As far as I'm concerned, all over the world, there's only 17. In this lake, in this floodplain type reservoir, it's about 1,000 miles long, quite a few reservoirs, quite a few dams. In my book, there's only 5 situations in either one of those where you and I should spend our time. And if you know something about a wide floodplain, I may talk on that one time, you will begin to understand that most of the time, most of the water contains no fish. So the structure situation, that's what we're going to talk about. The number one common structure is a bar. Now this is old stuff, you might say to it, but I'm going to get into it because I've got to remind you of it. If this bar comes out to here, say that's 5-foot contours, 5, 10, 15, say around 15 feet, or even 20 feet, and then peters out, that is not a structure situation. It's a structure, but you may have thousands of bars around that do not go all the way. And so they are not structured situation. But if you come on out and drop off into a break line and probably into the deepest water in the area, now that is a structured situation. It's a ridge-like feature that is different from surrounding area that goes all the way. That you have to check. That is a structured situation. Now, as I put these on the screen, you do yourself, do they look like that they're going to go all the way? Now here's the bar that I bring in here. This could come at a later time, but I brought it in right here before I get there. Here is a bar, one of the best bars that you run into in into a reservoir. It's where the channel swings in close and forms a bar down a long ridge. Now that one goes all the way. Now it has some other feature too. Here is the deepest water in the area. In reservoirs, that you can just say the channels are the home of fish. So that eliminates as far as saying where is the deep water. That is your guideline, whether it's up in a cove or whether it's out in the middle of the lake or whether it's anywhere in the lake. You figure that the home of the fish and your interpretation now must start at the channel. I don't care if it's in a lake, like in Lake Mead, for instance. The channel may be down there 150, 200 feet. My interpretation starts there. That's where your interpretation starts. If you try to make your interpretation from the things upstairs along the shoreline, then that's wrong. Your presentation of lures may start shallow, but your interpretation of whether you're going to have a structure situation or not must start at the channel, just like the fish. That's where he starts. This is where he sees the first things. And if he starts up this and it becomes a dead end, he's not going to use it. Now in this case right here, this particular bar goes all the way. Now here's the thing about this bar, and I often look for them in a reservoir, especially in one, lowland or highland. Let's say that the contact point is right here. He'll move up this break line most of the time before he'll move up on the bar. But as he moves up this break line, he has immediate access to deep water. At any point along there, he doesn't have to travel very far from he's back in the deep water. The structure that you're going to find the fish use is not so much that it takes him to the shallows. What he's interested in is how fast can he get back home. Think about that stuff. That's the reason. He'll go up, and as I often say, when he gets up around 8 or 10 feet, he says, "Whoa, back up! I'm getting in dangerous territory here." So this particular bar is very important, and a lot of you will probably run into it. That is a structure situation. I don't know who the fishermen are, but they're pretty smart. There's that long bar I'm telling you about, where the channels come in there close, sway in close, and go on out, and that's about the way it looked if the water was off of it. This is one of those things that the slide or wash that people don't pay too much attention to. But it's one of the more important features of a structure situation that will develop from this particular thing. And so I have to spend quite a lot of time on a lot of pictures to show you how important this rascal is. So, but this is something that about every reservoir I have in some form or another, but especially in highlands and some lowland lakes. And that's a slide. We had some lakes here at home, up in the mountains, and we had some slides pretty soon, back in the 20s, in this one mountain lake. And one of the most productive places in the whole lake, and is about 200 or 300 miles around this lake. One of the most productive areas that we had was these slides. Slides are washes. This is show you what slides and washes will do. Especially when they come down the side of the hill, they don't cut a channel, they'll form a bar. Very, very important. This particular bar happens to be on the Snake River in Idaho. I fished this bar quite a few times. I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 times. Every time, this is practically a canyon, but it's a very highland lake, as you can see. When the water was flowing up on the hill, it came down and formed this bar. And in the canyon lakes, and I'll show you some more in just a minute, in canyon lakes, it's the washes and slides that's going to produce most all your structure. This particular one, I was fishing for the first time I ran into this thing. I was fished a lot, and as soon as I saw this particular bar and this particular wash, I said, that one is going to produce. So I just started casting. I didn't even troll it. So I came around here and I started casting this thing, and when I got right there in that corner, I got a smallmouth ever cast. Maybe 5 years later, I fished it again. Then later, I fished it again. And what did I find? Most of the time, they're sitting right there. I caught a couple stragglers down here, but the school of smallmouth is sitting right there. Now, get a good picture of how a slide is and a wash is important. I might add an avalanche, because I'm going to go in, I'm going to bring in this wash right now. That wash in that channel is not a structured situation. It is a break on a break line. A break on a break line. It is important. It'll be important in this reservoir right here, because you're working the break line. And when you come to a wash, which was a wash that due to the delta it built up, the water hitting that hump, and it washed out a little thing. It washed out a little wash. And it's very important. Fish moving along that break line will pause or stop at that thing. But the structure situation is a side fishing cut that goes all the way. So don't get these things mixed up right there, because this is a break on a break line. This is what you folks were out there today. This is a kind of a figure of a wide floodplain type reservoir, which would be treated as a flatlander. Here I just put this. This is a hump, that's a delta that you see, and that's my wash. This is trolling water. And as you're trolling this water, then you're going to see this thing, because in just a minute I'm going to show you why you'll see it even if you're working that bottom break line. This little wash will show up if you own the money. This is a structure situation. This is fishing water right here. This is trolling water. Now this can become casting water, but you got to locate it first and see whether there's any fish there. It would be wrong to stop and cast it, because the fish periodically would only show there. Here is a structure situation. We know that. That's one of the majors, and we'll get to it in just a minute. Keep that in mind. This is a canyon. Now, a lot of you have probably never fished a canyon in a lake of this nature. But it's important to get the idea about how, keeping in mind how structure is formed and so on. And this is a good, clear indication of what happened. I know some of you have traveled west, going through the desert. And you see a high mountain on the right, you see a high mountain on the left, and it's just rock up there. Then there might be 5 miles of a saddle that you're looking at. Comes down and goes up the other side. And there's usually the railroad, and the road is going to hit the top of that saddle. I know if you've been west, that's what you're going to see. And you may be 5 miles from there up to that rock. Now you see all that debris and all that rocks, and you look at it and you say, how in the world did all that stuff get there? A lot of people say, well, it must have washed there. It did to a point, but here is where you're going to see how that thing worked. And this is, you could call this a slide, but you could also call it an avalanche. Here's another one. And in this particular case, here's the bar that built up due to that wash or that slide or that avalanche. This is a slide. The avalanche or slide. It comes right on down through here and it goes right plumb down to the channel. That is your fishing spot. Here's one. Come on. See the marker? See this dirt? See this avalanche, the wash? Brought it down here. Here's the dirt. Here is the Tennessee situation. Here's a steep bank, but the reason I show this at this particular point is the fact that when you're in these highland-type lakes or in these rock-type lakes, you must look for the dirt, whether it's in Tennessee or otherwise. A little later on, I'm going to get into that when we get into trees and things. This is another situation, which is a reef. Most of the time people think that the reefs are associated with lakes like the big Great Lakes. Well, this is true, but you'll be amazed how many are in Tennessee or any other in reservoirs. You don't find many reefs in flatlanders. You do find them in lowlands and highlands. And so this is a structure situation. If it goes all the way, that one went all the way. Because when you see it, it goes out through there and the water's breaking over the rocks and some of those stuff, you better get out there at the end of that thing and see what happens. But these at low water stage, at high water stage, that would be in the sanctuary depths. And this particular one, I think, is in Cherokee. This wide sweeping bar, I have to put it as a structured situation, but we have at the same time we got to examine this thing before I could call it a structured situation. This is primarily associated with natural lakes. And this is your predominant structure situation in most natural lakes, such as the north, where a lot of you fellows fish. Now, this distinction between this is whether it's got a break line. If you look at that thing, and it's usually associated with some kind of point or something, but you come up as you're fishing and you'll come up on a big wide bar, a sandbar or something of this nature. You better take a look at it, because in natural lakes and even some other lakes it does. So I put the contour lines out here. And many times this will get out on the end of the bar and she'll break. Now it's up to you to interpret this thing, and a lot of you I know has done this. So the interpretation of this bar isn't very difficult to do. You would think, where's the contact point? Where am I going to concentrate my effort on this big bar? It's still a structured situation. In the last newsletter or some back, I made this question for you fellows to think about. I said this: what would you call a sharper break? And that's where something that shows the sharper break, where she broke in, you saw the figure. A sharper break that breaks into the deepest water. A sharper break that breaks the deepest into the deepest water. Very simple. That's the contact point. I don't care how big this bar is. It's the area where a sharper break, you'll have breaks around that thing, where the sharper breaks off faster, where the sharper break breaks the deepest. In other words, instead of breaking at 12 feet or 8 feet or whatever it is, this one breaks down here at 16, 18 feet. Let me see if I can focus that a little bit better. Okay, now you see this is breaking the deepest, 18 feet. This one breaks at 16 feet. Sometimes this is only 6. This one up here is 12. This one breaks at 18. Now watch it. It broke the deepest into the deepest water. 35, 29, 24, 25. That's your contact point. So these big, wide bars and things that in your natural lakes and a lot of other type lakes, that is the way you say, how am I going to find this? Well, the best way I know is to troll it. And be sure that you're following the break line, and you'll see which one is, if you got a depth sounder, or if you know what the spoon plug is telling you, then you'll find out where it's breaking deep. If the fish are there, then there's no question about you'll find the contact point. But most of the time, when you hit a structure the first time, you're lucky if the fish are on it. But you may come back 2 or 3 times, so fish do not move constantly or consistently. But this is something that you have to probably come back and check. But when you were working this, you should have recognized the bar, the place on this bar that broke the deepest, the sharpest, into the deepest water. Broke the deepest into the deepest water. Those big bars, you have to consider them as structure situations. Here's another structure situation. I look at all islands. And a little later on, you see, I don't look at all islands for what we're going to see right here. I look at them for something else, a structure situation. In this case, this is an island that it has a channel on both sides. It has a bar at the lower end. Let's say the water's flowing this way. You have a bar here, and you have a bar here. Here is a look. I want you to see this right here, because pretty soon I'm going to stick some trees and bushes on all these structure situations. and we're going to see what's going to happen. The upper side, if you see these bushes and things on this before the dam went over it or anything, this you see has been washed clear. This bar here, you don't see any brush on it. You'll see a little brush down here at the lower end if the stream is running this way. So even though you have it, if I cover up that thing with that island and I put the lake is completely covered with brush, that upper side of that thing is going to be clean. In other words, you can get out the heck out of the brush. You can get the heck out of the timber. Here's the, when the water's up here, that's what the trees are showing. This is what, whether that's upstream or downstream, probably is downstream. And so you're going to have the brush all out through there probably if it's all covered with brush. But the upper side of that thing, up here on the upstream side, it'd probably be washed clean. You see how it's washed clean? And you can get on, you can get away from the timber. This, when you see this, you better check it out, because it is one of those things that I list as a structure situation. I don't know whether you're keeping count, but we'll go through them in all in just a few minutes. This is another one that a lot of people don't pay attention to. They ask me this: why did you put a saddle as a structure situation? You think about that sometime. Now, the reason I did it was the fact that sometimes the depth of water in that saddle in there is in the sanctuary depths in the center, so he could go either way. They could migrate either way on that structure situation. Another thing is, a lot of times you may not have the sanctuary depths there, but the breaks and break lines around that thing and up the other side of it, behind that island, may have break lines that eventually some fish can migrate to the lower part of that saddle. That's the reason I put it in there. It looked like to me that there wouldn't be much depth there, because that is a weed situation that you'll find up north. This is, it looked like that's pretty shallow, but that's a reflection. And when I shot that picture, the water at low water, it looked like that I would say that that is a saddle that wouldn't produce unless something led it up there. But when I actually looked at that, I found that this was actually a shadow of this thing over here. So this could, but in just looking at it, how steep it is, it seemed like it's kind of flattening out like here. Most likely, that would not produce, and you can recognize it, not in the sanctuary depths, so you just could forget that one. But many times, this is what you run into. If you look at that, you see this one could possibly be, because look at the depth up here. Now you're going to see what the slides will do. Now that's that island. And when I see those islands, you know what I think about? Is there a saddle in here that will pinpoint the fish for me? There's a hump. Many times I'm going to take up the hump because it's important. That's another structure situation. But look at that hump. Look at that. Look at this depth. That hump could be in the sanctuary depths. This right in here. I know they wouldn't go this way because that'd be dead end unless it looked like it might come up to 8 or 10 feet. But they go each way. But that saddle would be in there at high water. And when I see this or I see the top of that island, man, I'm going to get right down in here. Because if this is barely sticking out, that will lead to the shallows. This will lead to the shallows. This is most likely, if the lake was full, the water was way up here, the migration is going to be this way. That would be a dead end. Now, I hope that this interpretation isn't going too fast here, but these are some of the things that you're going to see in instructor situations that exist that you'll run into if you fish as long as I have in as many areas. This is humps. That valley, that saddle is most of the time is cut by the stream that probably flowed through there. This was probably produced by a slide. And as the water went through here, you can see the slide is still here. It came from up here. There's been some water there trickling through at times, but that was later. This thing occurred, and this was eroded by water, flood water, and so on. But you see the situation that exists in a saddle, and this is an island. This is a highland lake near my home. I can see this thing as I come up here. This is a short off a rock, and this is a gorge. This is back inside of my house. This is a gorge that they've never even taken the timber out of it. They can't get it out of there. But this is a lake right here that I've told stories, fishing with Dad, and I said, you're fishing in the wrong place at the wrong time when I was about 13 years old. And that's the lake he threatened to throw me in if I didn't shut up. But that particular, those two islands, one is a point, and here's an island. That cove back in behind there, at this point, it goes back fairly far and comes out, goes around and goes on up here, and the river goes on up here, and the lake comes up here and comes to the base of that short off right there. That produced a lot of fish for me. It was a little saddle right here that I've gotten a few fish right in the middle. I've gotten them off of this point here. I even got them off of this, but what happened was that after I examined it, this bar here was an underwater bar, and that channel came down on this side, came down here and swung here, and that extended to the Dover. Now, the reason I remember that particular area on this lake, as I fished it as a little bitty fellow with my daddy, was, believe it or not, that cove was called Backhouse Cove, because there are no rotten John up sitting back in there. So in other words, it should have been called a John Cove or something, but we call it a Backhouse Cove. We had another one right around the corner that we called Jack Stable, called an old Jack Stable, a log cabin back in there, and I remember all those names. But in this case, both points are produced, and the saddle did too, for me in past tense. Humps is another structured situation. There's all kinds of humps. You'll have humps in the sanctuary depths. You'll have humps and halfway to the shore in the shallows, and then you'll have humps in the shallows. You have to distinguish the ones that will produce. This confuses a lot of people. Let's take a bass and put him in the sanctuary depths with a hump. Let's say that the sanctuary depth is right here. This fish, a bass, don't expect him to go up to that hump because it doesn't extend to shallow water. Another reason that he wouldn't do it is because he won't go down the backside to come over here. So it becomes a dead end. The bass, most of the time when I run into this, and I don't fish the top of that hump, I found that out a long time ago that I had to forget that top of the hump. But the base of that hump is a different story. So I found that this was a break in the sanctuary depths, and the fish were related to that break right here before they migrated. Then they had to find a path that went all the way. Now, if this could be what I call a dead end. If that hump did not go and was related to a structure situation, such as a bar, and it did not go to the shallow, but say cut off at 14 feet, I don't ever expect to find any. I might find a smallmouth or something like that that might wander up on that rascal, or maybe even a northern come up on there. But when I'm looking for a largemouth, I don't spend much time there. I just maybe make a pass at it to see if anything's on it, because it does go to the shallows. If I had a brake line around that thing and come up here and come on up, and this one goes to the shallows, then that is going to give you a concentration of fish, because if you heard me say before, they will not go down the backside of the hump. But this would be the one. These are the humps. Sanctuary depths, humps, you check them out. But some species you might find here once in a while. But I do my fishing according to the big largemouth bass. I find that these guidelines will give me best control for the largemouth bass, because he reacts to weather and water conditions so drastically that if I learn how to catch him consistent in how he moves, then it's just too bad if the others get in the way. So I'm not belittling the other things, but when I go and catch the stripers out of San Francisco Bay, for instance, they ask me, how did you catch them? How did you catch them where you weren't supposed to? I said, I don't know, first time I've been here. I just went bass fishing. And so that's the reason I use the bass because he's the one that's very, very difficult. He reacts to weather and water conditions in such a way that the average guy has a little problem catching a bass, especially a good-sized bass. But humps, you find them downstairs, and most of the time they'll be breaks related to the fish. If they go upstairs, if the humps do not go to the shallows, such as 8 to 10 feet, it's going to be a dead end. If it comes to within the 8 to 10 foot depth, that goes all the way to the shallows, but the fish gave you a concentration of fish because they won't go down the backside of that, get any farther. These are our guidelines. Most humps are marked in some way. They may have a buoy on them. Some of them you don't see. But as you're controlling your depth with lures, the lures will find them most of the time. I always cut out across the lake at times when I see the terrain and I see a saddle, I see an island. This particular lake has quite a few little visible islands. That tells me there's some humps in there somewhere, and I start looking for them. And you'd be amazed how often I find one that's exactly right. That is a good one. That's a good one. Part of a saddle has a hump on the end. Let me go back and look at that. When I see that tree out there in the water with the high water, I am going to look for some stuff downstairs, always. That's the reason I said a visible island such as so is a structure situation. You've got to look it over. Now, as I place these on, you fill the water over that thing and start thinking about, would you fish it? That looked good to me. It could be extremely high, that even that hump could be sanctuary depth, and it wouldn't be back in the sanctuary depth over here if at a low water stage. But at a high water stage, it's possible that the sanctuary depth would be right here. And when you work in a lake such as this, as a Highland Lake, these are some of the things you have to look for. In this case, there's a saddle there, but this is caused by a wash. You had a slide, and then probably you had a wash, but you had a slide, and it produced this hump pile of rock right there. Delta. The delta situation, you boys should be remember this. This is more than a flatlander. It can be in the headwaters of lowlands too, but the delta situation is very important, especially in flatlanders. And what you're looking at is you got this flat. This is a wide floodplain type situation. Here you got a feeder cut that's going through there. Here you have the delta situation. Here you have the break line into here. Here you have your contact points right here. They either come up on the delta if it comes shallow, or if it goes on, or they'll go up this break lines into here up on this bar, up in this area right there. That's a typical thing to work at. The Tennessee, any flatlander and the wide floodplain, such as Tennessee River chain, is a delta situation in most all over it. This happened to be Douglas at a low water stage, showing the delta situation out there. I like to see them exposed, and Kentucky Lake and a lot of them, they expose very much. The water level will fluctuate, and so you have no difficulty seeing where it is. And I have to put the steep shore as a structure situation, because in extremely cold weather, the fish will use certain features on the steep bank. This is more in the wintertime. Our guideline is this: you want to find the steep structure situation. The reason for it is so that the fish will get back immediately to deep water. That's rock. The channel could swing in there close, but it could not. It is a flatlander. That was washed away before the dam was built, so to speak. This is a real key on slides, bars, Highland lakes, where you got a lot of rock, steep shore. I see a lot of people fishing the steep shore. This may produce in the wintertime, real cold, up, down. But the real key to where I will fish in a Highland lake such as this, where there's a lot of rock, or even in lowland lakes where I got a lot of rock cliffs, rock steep dirt, there's a key that I use. I look for the dirt. In this case, and I think Jack Wilbur's sitting in here, he was fishing. This particular scene is in Douglas. And I think I told Jack one time, it's a typical thing. In the season, he was working, and he finally got on this dirt, and I think that's the first big fish he ever caught out of Douglas. I don't know whether he's in here or not. But this is a real key in certain types, on slides, rocks, or anything. Look for the dirt. The dirt. And people, I see them pass the walleye fishing, passing up the dirt. I see the smallmouth fishing passing up the dirt. I see the sawyer fishermen passing up the dirt. They're staying with the rock. That's wrong. Go to the dirt. The slides and those things, and why is the dirt there? Something happened. And it happened downstairs. Or it could have been a slide, it could have been a wash, it could have been a gully, it could have been most anything. If it was all rock in a cliff area and here's some dirt, it's different. Something happened downstairs. I would work that steep bank, but I wouldn't spend too much time even in the wintertime. I'd have to go where I had a side feeder cove. In this case, if it's near the spawning season, I'd go back to this thing, and then I'd work the whole thing. This is a good situation here that I would use this feature right here the whole season. I got the steep shore and a reservoir. I look for the coves, for the spawning area as they move toward the stove, and then I got my dirt to check right there in the hot weather or whatnot. Even when I'm fishing for the lake in eastern Tennessee called Watauga, I have a tough time in that lake finding dirt, but I found 3 areas with dirt downstairs, and that's where I catch my smallmouth and all my largemouth bass, on that dirt. So the dirt is very important. That gives you a good example of dirt versus rocks. Dirt. This is a structure situation. I can move along pretty fast here now. This is structure situation is this bar between the bay channels. This is different types of this is more back in a cove. This is more like on where a major stream or a minor stream will come together out of a bar, out in a major part of your reservoir. So that is one of the major bars and things that you have to notice that is a structure situation in your interpretation of by your visual interpretation of a reservoir, as I'll show in just a minute. That's that bar in the center of that cove. That is a structure situation right there. Here is come to the major structure situation for reservoirs. And that's a side feeder stream cut. I don't care whether it's a highland or lowland or flatland or what, canyon, but you don't have many canyons, but a highland reservoir in the mountains and things, and a lowlands, which is a lowland type layer, rolling hills and so on, and then a flatland there. This is a real key to all reservoirs, is a side feeder stream cut. Now, sometimes these side feeder stream cuts may be in a certain reservoirs that when they come out, you only got the 2 bars at the front. This is a cove. Now, we're looking out toward the lake, and certain type, we're looking into it now. Certain type reservoirs, at certain places in the reservoir, you will only have the 2 bars. You don't have them on out through here, but in this case, your bar is here, and where the contact point in this case could be right here, but you got a bar right here. This is a structure situation. Goes all the way. Structure situation. Probably this goes way back up in here. But right here's the 2 bars. When you hear this is a structure situation basically until proven otherwise. Certain of them that will go out and they go over quite a distance in lowland type reservoirs. And you got 2 bars right here to the channel, contact points. Then they go all the way, side feeder stream cuts. Here, the bars that build up. This gully would go all the way, and here's the major part of the lake. Out here is this covered with water, you see, when a high would go way up here and cover all that channel back in there. But right here, I caught this at just as it was breaking down into this deeper water right here. Some of the flatlanders, I look at this way. You have to consider in a flatlander that you're going to have the 4 bars. This is a feeder cut that goes all the way. You must check this interest right here. I could tell you fish stories about that one. I could tell you fish stories about this one. I'll tell you fish stories about this one. They make contact. Here's a contact point right here from the deep water here. This is a chunk. They could move if weather conditions are good, and they have to be pretty good, and move up to this bar. The only time I've ever found them going back in here, believe it or not, is during the spawning season and then right in the dead of winter in the south for short periods of time. So this is a flat, this is a structure situation, and you always, that's the important one in a flatlander and in a wide floodplain type reservoir, such as the TVA system and so on. They're scattered from here to Missouri River all the way through. This is the real key to all of them. Now, here again, I'll repeat, your interpretation of a structure situation must start here. It went all the way. Your fishing can come this way. Your fishing can come this way, but your interpretation must start right here, right here. Your interpretation must start right here. See the route, just like the fish. Sunken roadbed is another one. You will find as you fish a little later in trees and brush, man-made features will keep you out of trouble. You get you the heck out of the timber. Channels will keep you out of the timber, keep you out of trouble. The side feeder cream cuts and so on. But the man-made features will keep you out of trouble. The man-made features is that dam I saw where I told you the fish story. The man-made features, when they took the dirt out of there, made humps and everything, but they cleaned that area up to build a dam, will keep you out of trouble. That's fishing water. Not only is it the fishing water, but it's the deepest water in the lake, which I like too. I try to show you to contact points at low water stage. This that will go all the way to sanctuary depths. It comes on across. I didn't even catch the other side where it came across the lake. I will comment about this particular one because I want to comment the same thing about the same thing on the next one. The first time I fished this and found this road bed, that sunken road bed, I found it right in this area. I didn't know how the roadway went, but I knew that it was a structure situation. And in this country, I knew that they didn't have any dead ends on those roads. So I got in right here. I didn't even see that little wash right there. I just kept going. It was maybe a couple, 3 miles. I just kept going. I just kept going. And right about there, I crossed the channel. And I went across there and way down here before it went way over there before it crossed. But it crossed the channel right there. That was the contact point. Now, what did I do after that? My interpretation, see whether the fish, even presentation lures, didn't start here. It started right there, where it crossed here. So this is a flat. It doesn't lead nowhere. So don't get the idea. And looking at roads, sunken roads, you look at where it comes in, and you look and see if it goes out over yonder. Then you know that it crossed the channel, the entrance. It went all the way. It's a very important thing, and if there's a lot of brush in that lake, that's a salvation to you. You can fish that structure situation. Anytime I see a building or something like that in a reservoir, I know I got a sunken road. And Jerry would tell you, the first time I ever saw Jerry catch a double, I think it was, and she limited it out on consecutive casts. I can't hear you. I got my ears turned off. But in this case, Jerry, I saw this thing way across the lake. And I said, now there's some sunken road bed, because this particular reservoir was just like, it was full of trees. And I mean full of trees. I said, now I saw that thing quite a long distance. I said, now there's some sunken roads over there that we can fish. And so we went over there, and there was this road, we found it, came right down through here, and right down through here, and there was a little side road that went down through here. We found the school of bass right there. How many did we catch?
Well, I don't remember the total, but I know I got 10 without missing one.
She got 10 without missing. Anyway, that's just a little key that sometimes that you might run across in trying to find a sunken road bed, and you're having trouble with timber, bushes, trees, brush, and you're having trouble, then the sunken road bed will save your life. A hedgerow. This I had to put as a structure situation. It's a man-made type feature in most cases. And most of the time when they built the fences, they went from the barn down across the field down to the creek. And you'll see them. Fences, hedgerows, and so on. A lot of times you'll see them out in the middle of the lake. Here's one, I followed this thing, it's not a delta. In this case, it was a hedgerow. Went right on up to this here area, right up there. It came right on out here and dropped into a channel that went right this way. Went down here, went across here, and across that way. Do not cross. This is a man-made structure situation. You never pass them up. Sometimes it may be in a canyon type area, in a very narrow one, but even there you're going to find some riprap. It's the deepest water in the lake, and in Fatlanders it's there. And you're going to have a lot of riprap, and this is the deepest water in the area. A lot of times near the dam you're going to have clear water, but in a lot of them, especially at seasons, you're going to have plenty of color right there. And the fall season coming up, you're going to find a lot of them in the reservoir. It's going to have some good color. This is a riprap. Don't pass it up. In a low water stage, this is a flatlander, in a low water stage where the water has gone down, dropped a lot, that riprap will really produce. If you know floodplain, flood control dams from here to California, they pull them down. And this water is close to the dam with a lot of riprap. This lake may have reduced in size to 1/3. Well, when it does that, you're going to have good watercolor. As it pull the water off the flats and so on, it comes down, you're going to get good watercolor. This fall, I will fish 3 of these where the water has dropped down. And I've been fishing them for 20 years. And I fish them in the fall, and I don't have to worry about where the fish are. This is, last year and year before last, I caught so many 6-pounders on a flood control dam on 500s and 400s. pulled it down, had good watercolor. So the dam area with long riprap, do not pass up the riprap. The 17-pound fish is a state record in North Carolina, came off the riprap. I put this in here because in studying that thing, why do the fish use the riprap and it will have hot spots? Many times there'll be a ramp that will lead the fish to a hot spot on the lake. But the major thing on the dam is where they've changed the channel. The old channel came through here and they blocked it off and they put a new discharge with a tail race down here at this place right here. Now, how I found that thing, I always drive across the lake, the dam, to see where the hot spots are. Sometimes I can't find but just the one, this one. Well, I found it because I saw this dry one behind here, and I knew that it had been changed. So there was a hot spot. As I troll the riprap, I will find any ramp or anything that led up to this thing in the building of the dam. Very important structure situation as is the riprap. Probably the one that is more important in a reservoir than the dam is a causeway. The causeway will pass across the lake. It may be several. When I look at a road map, I want to see a reservoir. I want to see is there a causeway. I like for the causeway, I like to have two, halfway up the lake and then way up the lake. Now this is for watercolor. Sometimes I can only find one. But I head straight to it just as fast as I could go. The lake level will be completely full of brush. You couldn't hardly get the only place that'd be clear for you is the channel. The rest of it's brush and trees. But here, in the building of this ramp, this road bed, they got the dirt from right around here. I guarantee you got some deep water, but it's being cleaned. Man-made, it's being cleaned. Here is a contact point. Here is the deep water. It's just as plain as the nose on your face. They can come this side, or they go the other side. They go this side, or they go the other side. If here is where you find the color. If there's any color in the lake, watercolor, you're going to find it at the causeway. Most of the time, the best color is going to be on the upper side. That is upstream side. And if you get this watercolor and it's clear on one side and you got some watercolor dingy on the other side of the structure, the causeway, that's the side you're going to find the fish on. Once in a while you might find one on the clear side, but you go to the dark side and then you got watercolor plus the structure. And the route is just as plain as the nose on your face. The contact point, right here. You ask me, how far do I go along that causeway from this point? I see a lot of people moving along a causeway and they go too far. The fishing water is this. As you move along the causeway, you're going to have some deep water here. You keep going across this thing till you come up in this area up here maybe a quarter of a mile, and you check this water up here, you see that it's become 14 feet, 12 feet, and so on. Then when you get to where the water is only 10 feet off of the causeway, that's as far as you go. Don't go any farther. Then go a little deeper. In other words, to go just there. But that run in there sometime during the day, if the weather's okay, it will produce. The opening is, say it's down here. I'll come up, here's the shallow water. I'll come up to it's 10 feet off here. Then I quit. I don't go any farther. I've seen guys go 10 feet and they go another quarter of a mile. They're wasting their time. Whoa, back up. I'm getting too shallow. This particular one has 3 hot spots. This will happen so often, it's unbelievable on causeways. It happens all the time in reservoirs. People miss it. And you know yourself how many times you've seen this bridge way over to one side. And when that happens, I'll guarantee you, you're going to have beautiful watercolor back in here. This is a hot spot. This is a hot spot. This is a hot spot. Most people will find that one. But they won't find this one, they won't find this one, they won't find that one. And there's some in Ohio that will scare you to death if you find it right. I think we got some Ohio people in here. Structure situation. What is it? Structure, a place on the bottom that is different from surrounding areas, such as a bar. Breaks, like rocks, sunken boats, trees, bushes, breaks on the structure. This equals, this break lines and deep water equals, see the equal marks? Equals features fish use in their movements and migration, consistent of this, and that's what we call them right there. Now, if they don't go all the way, they are not structure situations. Now, we looked in this to 17. You may not remember them all, but if you look, you study the material and as you travel through life, I believe you will remember these 17. I don't care where you go, that's them. That's all of them. So with that, that was long, but I tell you, here it's in this area that I'm talking about where most fishermen have problems. Let's take a little break.